Okay, last time we made these enemies with vision cones, and in doing so we kind of broke our general enemy class, or our little dumb enemies no longer work, I believe, so we're going to fix that today. I also have a couple of things I need to fix that people have pointed out. One is that somebody has had a bug where you can pick up the shotgun multiple times from the same shotgun, and it's because the way we do pickups is it's on a collider, and when you enter that collider, and the player collides with that collider, you pick it up. But the shotgun has 3 colliders on it, and they're all children of something that has a weapon component on it, so in theory you can hit all 3 in one frame and trigger that 3 times. So that's not how it should work, is it? Let's fix that. The fix for that, I think, is just let's have the collider be on the weapon itself, not on the child. Because the child, it's good that having 3 cylinders on the shotgun is a good thing. It looks right, and we wouldn't want to restrict ourselves from being able to do stuff like that. Those things will come with colliders when you create 3D shapes, but we don't want those colliders, really. I did think about this. I thought about giving us a general collider shape for the weapon, for all weapons that's the same for everything, which is good and consistent. It's a decent impulse. I resisted it at the time because I thought, well, actually, if it happens to be, the collision volume precisely matches the look of the weapon, that seemed like an upside, really. You'll never see it get picked up when it shouldn't. But actually, this is something that's worth just standardizing, because the player is probably going to expect all weapons to pick up at about the same range, and also we're going to be generous, and generally when you're erring in the player's favour, they're not going to mind. So if the weapon gets picked up a little bit sooner than they expected it to, they're not going to be annoyed about that. On our weapon, in the prefab, make sure you're editing the prefab and not one of the instances. Add component, and I'm just going to type the word collider, and I guess we'll do a capsule collider, right? Let's do a spherical collider, a sphere collider, which basically that'll mean just whenever you go within a certain radius from any direction, you'll get it. Obviously, when it gets created, we see a problem here. It's in the wrong place relative to the visual thing. That's because the weapon's origin is where it's going to align with the player's origin when you're holding it, which means the weapon itself is in front of its own origin. It's tempting to drag this arrow, isn't it? You really want to drag this arrow? That's not going to fix it. Let's see what happens if I do that. So I'm not going to do that. This collider, because it's a component of this game object, the way you move it is a bit different. We just have to find these properties here. The sphere collider component we just added, it's got center properties, and remember this blue arrow is our Z dimension, that's forwards, so we can just drag that Z dimension till it roughly matches the thing. And we can the radius is 0.5, let's just make it 0.6 just to kind of be safe. Like I say, it's good to err on the player's favour here. And then the next thing we do is go to the cylinder that currently has the collider on it, and take that off. So we click this little cog next to it, and we can just say remove component. And it's gone now. Still looks like a cylinder because it's still got the cylinder mesh filter and the mesh renderer. And that's it for the weapon prefab. That should have fixed it on all of the ones where we don't actually care, because the Uzi and the rifle only have one collider in the first place, so they weren't having this bug. But they all have their sphere colliders and they're the right size. Shotgun has one too, so that'll work, but to fix the bug we also need to remove the cylinders. We also need to remove the colliders from the 2 other cylinders, because the shotgun, remember, it's a custom one, so it has the cylinders bolted onto it that are not part of the prefab. So we need to edit those individually. Just take those off. And then we'll click play. Just want to check that worked. There's a difference here. Yep, I know what I forgot to do. The shotgun is blocking me, and the reason for that is if we open up the prefab, I forgot to check is trigger, because we don't actually want these to collide with things, we want them to trigger or something. We want to trigger some behaviour. And we had that set on the other colliders, but I forgot. And now pick it up. So let me just, that works now, which is good, but I just want to check. I just want to point out something, because we actually did some special code to make sure that it would find the component even if the collider is not on the same actual game object. Like if the collider is on a child of the component that has the game object that has the component on it, we'll find it by doing this get component in parent thing. And you may have been surprised that we didn't need to change that. It already works. Get component and parent, I thought, and it seems I'm right, will work even if the component actually is on the very same game object that you're checking. So we don't need to change that. We could if we want to do, but I think it's might as well leave it as is. It really means find it in the current thing or its parent. In a sense, isn't everything its own parent? No, don't listen to me. That doesn't help at all. Okay, there's one more thing. This one is actually something that I wanted to know the answer to last time, and then I realised I already know the answer, which was I was seeing some faint light leak, I would describe it as. Let's find our obstacle here, and go to scene view. I pressed F to focus on it. If we move this over here so that we get a shadow like that, and let's just, don't do this yourself, but I'm just going to briefly disable all the enemy behaviours to see if I can make it just stay still, because what I want to show is, I'm not seeing it anymore. Okay, but there was like a faint leak of light where things that should be blocked weren't being blocked, or it was blocking like most of the light but not all of it, and maybe I can replicate it here. Yeah, there you go. And the way I'm replicating this will give you a clue as to what it is. So I was seeing like this last episode, and that was really annoying because it's like, you kind of got the right behavior, but there's just this weird like half measure here where you know it's blocked, but you're still showing some light. And what's really happening is Unity has different quality levels for lighting depending on how close you are to the light. So it's using all its full lighting flashiness when you're close up to it. When you're far away, if I go far enough away, there's no collision at all on the lighting, it just shows the light, which is just cheaper for it to do. And the reason you can have a halfway state is that it doesn't want to pop in, it doesn't want it to flicker on or off. It wants it to, as you get close to something, the low detail version gets merges into the higher detail version. So this isn't a mega important thing to fix. You might not even have been seeing it on your project, depending on just the scales you've used and where the camera is exactly. But I want to show you how to fix it just because it's good to know. It's under project settings, and I believe it's under quality. Yeah, there's this variable shadow distance. It's set to 40 right now, so it's 40 meters. In a FPS, a light 40 meters away, it's reasonable to have that not have the full shadowing fanciness on it. In our game, we're actually a very small arena. We happen to be quite a lot of units away with the camera, so I'll just up that to 80. And in this, sorry, in case I didn't explicitly mention, this is the project settings. It's got loads of things about your project, and one of the tabs here is quality. For me, it just started on quality. It might not do that for you, so this is where you need to click. And we just changed the quality settings for very high. Our project has all these different quality settings. The important thing is, am I still running the game? I'm still running the game, aren't I? I should stop doing that. Let me just go back into that. Oh, that's interesting. I feel like since I last... Oh, very weird. I think the reason I wasn't seeing it this time and I was seeing it last time is that our project has changed from defaulting to very high to defaulting to ultra. Anyway, so all these settings are different for different quality levels, and my change didn't save because I was running the game at the time. I am going to change very high from 40 to 80. And this default level, I am certain it was on very high before, because I changed the value in very high and it fixed it. So this is how you change the default quality level. The kind of game we're making, it's not going to strain anyone's computer. We're not going to run into performance problems, I don't think. And so we don't need to worry about these quality levels. We're just going to pick one and stick with it. Let's just, whenever it has the green check mark on yours, make sure that value is like at least 80 for shadow distance, and you'll be fine. So the reason we're not going to bother customizing all of these is that Unity has actually taken away the menu that lets the player choose this. It used to, every project would just come with a default menu for choosing quality. Annoyingly, they've removed that from Unity, so you don't get it anymore. And making your own one is kind of a pain, and for a project of our size, it's not worth doing. So it's just a net loss for the player, unfortunately. For projects of this size, it just doesn't make sense to put in the work to do a proper like quality and visual settings menu unless you're going to charge money for it or something like this. And so the net result is we'll just have a slightly less convenient thing for the player, which is a shame. Anyway, on the plus side, for our purposes, we just don't need to worry about the other quality levels. We just pick one and stick with it. I think very high is reasonable. Ultra, I don't know if Ultra does anything really demanding, but very high seems safer. Anyway, that's sold at game level view, and if we see it again, we can just increase that figure. So I think that's all our bugs fixed. And oh yeah, I turned everyone's behaviour off. I just turned that back on, and then I'll probably get spotted immediately because they roam. Okay, and they see me. What I want to do next is I want to just make this more of a level in which we're going to be trying to steal these weapons out from underneath the guards. So the guards are going to be guarding them, and we're going to steal them. So I really hate this green colour I've picked for obstacles. I'm going to make that just black, I guess. And should we give all the walls that material? Can I assign? Yeah. Is that better? Yeah, I kind of like that. And then for these obstacles, I just want to make them, I think they'll be a bit bigger, like 10 by 10. Or maybe even longer in one dimension. Let's try that. Is that going to be annoying? Maybe it's going to be annoying. And I'm going to be stomping all over stuff at the moment. I'm going to hit Control D to duplicate this, and then just drag it out like that, and then again like that. Maybe all of these want to go a bit more central. And then the idea is I'll just put like guards at the intersections here, and of course there will be 2 intersections and 3 guards, but that's okay. We could just do it irregularly, like that, and then let's just make sure one of the weapons is in front of each guard, like here. That's the shotgun. The rifle, doesn't matter that they've got lost in these blocks because I'm just selecting them in the hierarchy and I can drag them out again. Let's have one of them, not the rifle, but this would be the easiest one to get, wouldn't it? And then the hardest one to get would be the Uzi, which is between these guys, and this is us, the player. Let's start all the way away from these guys, and if I play that, it's going to be a bit of a mess because they're going to walk around in circles and they're going to kind of drift from their positions. So one day we'll have them actually kind of searching or patrolling these corridors, but for now I actually think they'd be better off if they just didn't move, if they just turn around. Now we don't need to change any code to do that. I can just open the guard prefab and just change their speed to 0. And now they should just rotate on the spot. They don't because of that old thing where I didn't save that change before I clicked play, so it didn't get registered. And now it should work. Yeah. Okay, so now it's like I gotta wait for this guy to look away and then grab the gun, and then when I've got it, I can't see my bullets at all. And it's also quite hard to hit this guy. But anyway, none of the things that are breaking here are the things I just made, so I don't care. I like that when you shoot them they spin faster because I think you're giving them some angular velocity. And then finally get the Uzi and take these guys out. Okay, so them seeing me doesn't do anything at the moment, but that's the kind of basic configuration that I have in mind. And I think, should we move our camera? Because it's a bit hard to see what you're doing once you're behind these blocks. I think we might want more of an overhead view. Something like that. I just did that in the scene view using right mouse and WASD, and now I'm going to go to main camera, game object, align with view. Should find that the game itself is now. Yeah, it's a lot more zoomed out, and I want to get this shotgun, I think. The spinning's really funny. So what I want to happen is that when they see you, all the old enemies we had will flood in. And to do that, we've got this enemy spawner that we disabled. We can just turn that back on, probably move it to down here. And what I think we'll find is that it crashes. Yeah. What is the crash? Let's find out. My light has not been assigned. Yeah, so the thing that we're going to do today is create basically a parent class and a child class. So you know we've been parenting objects to each other. This cylinder is a child of that shotgun. Parenting in programming terms basically just means it inherits something. In other words, some property of the parent also applies to the child. So in the case of objects, it's position and scale and rotation. So they inherit position. So the shotgun's at 17 minus 11, and the cylinder is also at 17 minus 11, and then it gets to have its own position as well, which is added on top of the parent, but it's inheriting that 1711. It says 0 and 0.7, but actually in world space, in absolute coordinates, this is at 17 minus 11. It inherits that from its parent. So a parent and child class, class is like a script, it's a behavior. If we're going to take this enemy behavior that we have, or guard behavior, sorry. Is that right? Am I seeing... We already have 2 files? That doesn't seem right to me. No, sorry, I think I had those open from when I did a practice version of this episode. So we just have an enemy behavior, right? This is us. I was expecting to only see 1 file. Yes, it has been modified. Yeah, we have this one enemy behavior, and we're going to make a child of it. Now, I was wrong in a previous episode when I predicted that we would want the guard to be the parent enemy, and then we'll have a child that's the kind of less intelligent version. That made sense in my head, but now that I come to do it, I realise that's not the best way to do it. It actually makes more sense. Since the guard is more specialised, we're going to have a general enemy class, and the guard is going to be a special case of it. So, ultimately, this little nodule enemy here, they're going to have a different behaviour on them to our guard, which is over here. But they're going to have a lot in common. And so the first thing I'm going to do, I've got an enemy behavior file selected in the project, and I'm going to do Control D. Does that work? Yeah, so I've duplicated it now. So I'm going to name one of these enemy behavior and one of these guard behavior. Or rather, I should say I'm going to leave one of these named enemy behavior, and then the copy I'm going to call guard behavior. If I open it, now we've got a real serious problem. We should have, yeah. Which is enemy behavior. So I've renamed the file. The name of the file doesn't actually matter. It doesn't affect anything. Although I think there's dangers. Off the top of my head, I can't remember if it's a problem if you rename a file when there's game objects that already have that on them as a script. I think actually Unity's alright with it, but anyway, that's not what we're doing right now. The thing I wanted to say is that this file name guard behavior, it still says right at the top, it declares itself. You know how you declare a variable, you also declare the class, and it declares the class as enemy behavior, which is not, so I'm going to call that guard behavior. So now we've got 2 identical files called different things. That's obviously not where we're going to end up. What I want is for guard behavior to inherit from enemy behavior. So here it says guard behavior : mono behavior. That mono behavior is a word that applies to every script we've written so far, except for references. Yeah, except for references. So remember, references is this abstract thing. It's our hotline that we created that we can call. That's off in the ether somewhere. It's in heaven, if you like. Everything else in every other script we've written is a behavior, and we've been putting that word behavior in them, and that's just to sort of remind us that they are attached to a game object. They determine how some object in the world is going to behave, and they are all actually children of this thing called mono behavior, which is just Unity's. It's a term for a Unity component, basically. And now that we've created our own class that we want to be a child of a parent, we're going to have guard behavior. Instead of inheriting from mono behavior, it's going to inherit from enemy. Nope. That would be a weird world. Yes, enemy behavior. So that basically says it's going to inherit everything. And if I don't do this, but I'm going to select everything in here and just cut it. If I had an empty class like this, and then we gave guards this, it would do everything that enemy behavior does. It would do this on start, it would do this on update, it would do this on collision enter, it would have all of these variables. That it looks empty, but because it's inheriting from enemy behavior, it means it gets all of that stuff. And I'm going to put all that stuff back, because actually a lot of the stuff we want to keep as the guards version. So the question is, what do we want in our parent enemy class? So there's going to be stuff that's general to both the little seeking guys and also the watchers with the vision cones. So what should be general? Speed should be general. We want both of them to have speed. Vision range and cone angle, no, that's specific to guards. So let's delete that. Alerted, I think let's leave that for now. Rigid body, yes, they both want rigid bodies. Light, no, the little ones don't need lights, do they? The light is for the vision cone, so the little ones don't need that. Turn speed, also no. We could eventually have that, but right now we're not talking about, when we say turn speed at the moment, we're not talking about like agility or anything. It's to do with their patrol scanning rate, which is a stealth thing, which is not applicable to our little guys. So I'm just deleting all stuff that isn't relevant to little guys. And a lot of this is for detecting the player, right? So this is rotating, this is checking whether we've seen the player. None of that is relevant to the little guys. So I think we just get rid of it all. Can't see anything that really needs to happen there. And then further up, there's stuff about finding a vector to the player and then following the player. Now that stuff, we need a term, let's call them swarmers, the little guys who just chase after you. The swarmers do want this behavior, they want to be able to chase you. So all this stuff that will delete anything about lights, and we're getting towards just a little chunk of code that basically follows the player. Excuse me. Let me try. Okay. The little trick I just did there, first I did it wrong, and that's why you heard a bing noise. If you hold Control and then press K and then D, that auto formats your script. So if you've got like all your indents out of whack and you do Control K D, then it puts it all in line. That's convenient, but also it's sometimes really helpful when you've if you delete stuff, you need to know, wait, do these braces line up? And if they do, it'll all end up looking nice. So all of that chases the player. I am going to, since this is a behavior that the normal, the swarmers are going to use all the time, and the guard's only going to use it some of the time, it's helpful if we just make it into its own method. So if we say, I'm going to write protected void follow or chase player. Yeah, I think this is worth teaching. So the word protected is a bit like the word private, but it means your children can have it too. So if you say private, on click and enter, the child actually can't use that at all. Is that true? Damn. Does that mean all this stuff should be protected? We're going to find out. I'm not going to change anything else to protected, and if it crashes, we'll know why. Okay. I'm writing protected here because I need the guard behavior, which is a child of the enemy behavior, is going to need to be able to call this function, and I want to be able to access it. And then we're just going to move all of that to here. So most of what we did there was just we deleted a bunch of variables up here that weren't relevant to swarmers. And if we create new enemy classes in the future, they won't be relevant to them probably. And then the only relevant part of update was this bit where we chase the player. And so we've pulled that out and we've called it chase player. And then the last thing we're going to do is we do want the swarmers to chase the player, so they're going to do that in their update. So that should be a swarmer behavior that works. But now our guard behavior is all confused because we are inheriting some stuff and not others. Let me try. The first thing I want to do is this update thing. This is the biggest, messiest thing. But we already have a chunk of code that says follow the player. So let's just delete that and say follow. Ooh, no, we can't. Sorry, it was chase, wasn't it? Chase player. So that's that method we just described earlier. But the reason we want to do it that way and make a method and call it is that if we ever change how this code works, we want it to change in both places. We want both entities to use the new updated code. The thing you might notice, some of this is repeated, like that stuff actually is also in the chase player script. That doesn't matter because it's just declaring variables, so it's a little bit wasteful to do it twice, but it's not worth doing extra work to try and avoid that. We need these variables, player position down here, and vector to player also down here, so we don't want to get rid of those. So all this on collision enter stuff, we can get rid of that because that's that's in the parent class. And then this rRigidBody equals get component rigid body. We want to do that, but we don't need to because it's in this. But I'm just trying to. So the thing I do know is that if we write base.start here, then okay, so that didn't work, and that is because this protected word that I mentioned, that is important. We need that everywhere. We need that on start. We need it on update. We need it on collision enter. So if something is private or if it doesn't mention what access scope it has, in other words, if it just starts with void, that means private. It's the same as writing private void, and private is really strict. It seems private means that only this thing we're looking at, this thing we have on our screen right now, can access it. Nothing else can. If we say protected, then the child of the class can use it too. So when I say base.start now, hopefully it's going to let me do it. And so that is saying whatever our parent has as their start, let's do that. We also need, because there already is a start that we inherit from our parent, we need to specify that we're overriding it. So if I say override void, it's going to understand me, but it's probably going to complain, because it's going to say, because we haven't specified, we need to make it protected as well, basically. Okay, there's one more step to this. God, this is more complicated than I remembered. I'm going to write all the little steps to this down in a minute. We need to write the word virtual there. Okay, this is. I did consider doing this for weapons first, like making a child of a weapon, because our weapon class is really simple. That might have been a good idea in retrospect. This has become quite a lot to learn all at once. Let me just see, do we have any errors right now? Last thing is update is now complaining. So we're going to make this a protected override void update, and it's still going to complain because update is not virtual yet. Protected virtual void update. Okay. Save all that. Okay. Now I will do a breakdown of these words. So right at the top, let's write the main thing, which is this is our parent class for all enemies. Code here should be stuff they all use. And then in guard behavior, let's add a note just to say this is specifically guard behavior. Anything all enemies do will be handled by our parent enemy behavior. And then all the little syntax stuff we've been doing. Wow, I wasn't even close to that word, was I? All the syntax stuff we've been doing, I'll also explain that. So, protected virtual void. This is where the word salad gets a bit overwhelming. Protected. This function can be used by our children and us, but no one else. We could just make it all public. There's nothing to stop you doing that. But it's not good practice to do that for everything. If you'd written that in your code and I was looking at your code, I wouldn't be like, you can't do that. But if I'm teaching you how to code, then I probably shouldn't teach you to do that, because I mean the advantage of doing that is just that you've already learned the word public, so it's one less word to learn. But it is a bit mad to have every single function in a whole class be public, because it means anything could trigger your start. You don't want somebody else to trigger you to initialize when you already handle that yourself. It should never happen. And then the sort of clean code way of doing things is if it should never happen, then you code it so it can't happen. You make it so that if anything tries to do that, it's going to fail. It's not allowed to access that thing. And the idea is that helps you keep it clearer in your head. You can't make a mistake, or there are fewer mistakes you can make. We don't go too far in that direction. We're not going to make our code super strict and tight and locked down so that you can't make any mistakes, because often that ends up being at least as much work as the mistakes would be to make in the first place. So virtual means this can be overridden by our children. But if they don't override it, they just use our version. So is there a mnemonic for that? You can remember, like, I guess you could say something like, virtually all enemies use this. Might not be true. Maybe they'll all override it, but just to remember that, like, what the hell is virtual versus protected versus whatever. And then just as a reminder, void, this is what the function returns gives us back when we call it, in this case nothing, and then the last thing is just the name of the function. So that's, hopefully that covers everything in this document. All these functions have protected void on them. I'll just say unprotected. We need to put this in front of everything our children might want to use. Yeah, so maybe that's even worth a separate note. We probably don't want anything to be private. It's unusual that you have anything in the parent class that you don't want the children to be able to access. Sometimes you might have a function that you don't make virtual because you don't want any of the children to change it, but you still wouldn't make it private because the children probably want to be able to run it. Maybe that distinction's worth making too. No, I think I already made that distinction, right? Protected means that our children can use the function. Virtual means they can override it, they can change it. Overridden / changed by our children. And then in this one, we'll say protected. Again, this would mean if we had children, they could use it. But the more important reason that we use this is that this function has to be so protected is a scope, like private and public, and we already said that start is a protected function, and so we have to let me show you the problem. Let me show you where you can't. I can't do private override, right? It's going to complain about that, surely. Yeah. It's going to say virtual abstract members can't be private. And what if I say public? It's going to say cannot change access modifiers when overriding protected inherited member enemy behavior start. So what it's telling us there is that we said start was protected, and now we're saying it's not. Now we're saying it's public. Well, we can't. We've got to be consistent. We have to give it the same access type as we did in the parent. Just use protected. And then override. Override means we know our parent has one of these, has a version of this function, and we're deciding to override it. Use our version instead. But we're also saying base.start call our parents, let's say run our parents version of this. So overriding the start means we're going to run ours instead of theirs, and then when we say base.start, we're saying we'll run theirs first and then we'll do some stuff. And now that I've done that, it's clear to me that in enemy behavior we actually don't want alerted. Alerted is a stealth thing, and it's not relevant to our swarmers. Swarmers don't have a concept of alerted or not. They're always alerted. They're constantly alert. So I apologize for the word salad there. I hope I've made sense of most of it. I realize that was a lot of typing without playing. So shall we see if we can play? We're going to have to change some prefabs first, because we've made two different files, and not all of these, not everyone will have got them. Okay, yeah, so the enemy behavior, is no longer the right component for this. We're going to take it off, and we're going to add guard behavior. I wish I had your screen in front of me now, because I'm sorry, there's one more thing we need to do to guard behavior. All that stuff that we already declared in the parent, all the stuff that's already in the parent, we can get rid of now. So we don't need speed, we don't need rigid body, and I guess that's it. Everything else is just ours. So when I looked back in Unity, it had speed twice, and that's because we declared it in the parent and in the child. And there was a Unity warning about that. It was also a Visual Studio warning about that. It was telling us that we'd done that. So sadly, because of the way I've done this, I've lost those individual stats. Is this loading? Did I not save or something? Oh, it's actually throwing an error. Is that because, is our rigid body not public? Oh, yeah, it's not public. So we could, let's just make that public. And then that fixes that, yeah, okay. So that was essentially because we didn't tell it whether it should be public or private. It assumed private, and private things can't be accessed by the child. So that should have fixed that. Yep. And now all of our vision range and cone settings are back at 0. I might look at, let me see, do I have a tutorial folder, tutorial notes, and somewhere in there is a link to a tutorial. I'm going to look at our own tutorial to find out what those numbers were. I could derive them again by looking at the this is going to be a bit of an Inception thing for you, I guess. You're watching a video that's watching a video. I just want to see those stats, those good stats. Okay, so we've got something set there. Is that what we settled on? 9.2, and let's say 35. See if our game runs at all. Oh, the light thing hasn't been set yet. The my light variable, we just need to drag our spotlight into that. Turn speed is nothing. Let's give it 1. Okay, well, the enemy spawner's back. Interesting. So that seemed to work in terms of the angle is right. They don't go red anymore when they look at us, which is interesting. I'll have to figure out what that was. But hey, both enemy types exist, and the game isn't crashing. So our job actually is a success. Those health bars are really pretty obnoxious at this point, aren't they? That almost completely worked. They're just not going red anymore, which is slightly weird. But let's check that. Oh, I know why. I think I know why. It's because the chase player thing. I think we used to do it here, didn't we? Lilac.color equals color.red. I think I just got lost in the move. Because chase player, we broke all this down into chase player, but I think there was a light thing there as well. Yeah, that's cool. I like the shadow that they cast on us as well. Okay, that's pretty cool. We're basically done. I just want to do one last thing, which is just to get the logic in there that we did all of this for. We want there's two enemy types, one that's looking to detect you, one that's going to be summoned when you are detected, and we don't have that yet, do we? We've got, on this enemy spawner, we've got enemy spawner script. Let's just give it a public bool. Remember, that's a boolean, a true or false, for activated, and it will start as false. We can set that in the inspector, but I think it will default to false anyway. And then what I want is for guard, when guard is alerted down here, let's label this is first time we see the player. We want to refer to that enemy spawner, so we need a spot for it in references. This probably won't be how we do it in the long run, but for now it's a good convenient way of doing it. We're going to declare a public static enemy spawner. Remember, static means we can access it from anywhere. It's an enemy spawner rather than a game object because we actually want to talk to the script. We don't just want to do something to the object in the world. We want to tell the script, hey, you're active. So enemy spawner, we'll give it an awake function. Remember, we use that. Awake happens before start, and that's when we want to set up any references. So references.spawner equals this. As soon as we wake up, tell the references hotline, hey, if anyone asks for the spawner, that's me. And then guard behavior, where first time we see the player, is going to go references.spawner. Sorry, no, not activated equals true. So enemy spawner has an activated boolean. It tells references who it is. Guard behavior, when it sees the player, tells the looks up, calls the references hotline, says, hey, get me the spawner, and tell the spawner they're activated. When the spawner is activated, we want that to actually determine when they spawn an enemy. So in their update, we're going to say, if activated, do all this. So that way, when activated is false, they won't do anything. So I hope that all made sense. They're going to start unactivated. When they are activated, they spew out enemies, and it's guard behavior that's going to activate them. Let me just check that in the inspector, enemy spawner should have a field for activated, and it's off. So no enemies come out. That's correct. And then we let someone see us, and enemies come out. Awesome. So that is basically our gameplay concept. It's got a long way to go yet before it, is fun, but there's the idea. See if you can steal the weapons without summoning the enemies, and then once you have them all, or once you're in a good position, you will have somewhere you manually summon the enemies. Either you pull an alarm, or maybe there's something you're going to steal, and you steal that thing, and that always trips the alarm. So you're going to fight those guys eventually, but you just want to be in the best possible spot to do it when you do. Our rifle is pathetic, by the way. It does almost no damage, even though it's really slow firing, and it's also almost impossible to see the bullets. Of course, now that I've got weapons, I can just shoot everyone really easily. Firing a weapon should set off the alarm, I think. So, like, until you have a weapon, you have to just sneak around, and maybe there could be a stealth takedown or something, but we can decide that as we come to it.